Welcome to Self-Helpful. I'm your guide, Kevin Miller, and I curate the sea of new personal development messages to bring the most influential leaders onto this show. Join me as I question my guests to better understand their counsel so we can all integrate the wisdom into our lives, because we all want to elevate our own experience and improve the way we show up for others. The Self-Helpful podcast is presented by Ziglar, your premier source for equipping coaches. Visit Ziglar.com. Hello, Self-Helpful listeners. In this episode, 5 steps to understanding and leveraging your perspective style. This is the wrap up to my series on perception, which continues to be really just a prominent issue for me amongst this whole concept of personal development. As long as we perceive our reality to be the factual overall reality, we are just greatly limited and handicapped. Me too. I brought on an expert for this series on perception, Lynda-Ross Vega. She and clinical psychologist Gary Jordan developed the perception style theory to help individuals identify their strengths, appreciate human differences, and navigate challenges. Their book is Unlock the Power of Your Perception. If you're watching YouTube, but you can now see all the episodes on, it's right over my shoulder here. After talking in depth with Lynda-Ross, then talking further in part 2 of the series with my brother, Jared Angaza, I've pulled out 5 aspects of perspective style that I am working to learn from. Again, you can watch these all on YouTube. We now find out about 30% of people listen to their podcasts or watch them on YouTube. You can find us there. Just search for Self-Helpful with Kevin Miller. All right, 5 steps to understanding and leveraging your perspective style. I'm going to talk through these with you. And for admission or for context, I came from a pretty religious background, raised in the Bible Belt of America. It's, the focus was absolute truth, right? Certainty, black and white, right or wrong. And, saying that everyone has their own truth, and I put that in quotes, that was blasphemous. I used to look at gravity and say, come on, gravity is an absolute truth. Well, sure. Let's call it an objective reality. If you drop something on planet Earth, for the most part, it's going to fall, or I guess it'll fall. And that's an objective reality. However, and the point here is our experience of it is different. The feeling we have around it is different. The fear we may have of gravity or not, that's our perception of that. I used to look at, from a health and wellness standpoint, I wanted to, again, on the right or wrong thing, or even just that better, best, healthier or not, broccoli is better than a Hot Pocket, right? Come on. I used to tell I said that to my friend, Dr. Randy James, who does a lot of these shows with me. Broccoli, it just is, right? Just absolute truth. Broccoli's better than Hot Pocket. And he said, well, yeah, unless you're like coming out of the desert, starving, near death, and then that Hot Pocket is absolute life. Well, son of a gun, so we're bringing in context and we're perception again, and it changes the perspective, I think, it changes the perception on perception. That's our point here. So number 1, objective reality. It's the only fact. After that, it's perception and individual truth. In the previous shows, I talked about a bear coming out of the woods and our perception. But in this case, I'm going to use COVID. All right. All of us here have lived through COVID, if you're listening. And COVID happened. That's an objective truth. Absolutely happened. COVID happened. That's it, though. After that, there is no reality. Listen to that. This sounds like, one dude's opinion. It's not, though. This is Lynda-Ross's research and a lot of other people. This is an overlapping theme that keeps coming up in the shows in personal development. And I think in personal science, even, that COVID happened. That's the only objective reality. That's the only fact. After that, any meaning, any feeling, any opinion is story. Now, hold on with me, though, because that sounds like something we just made up. And that's not necessarily the case. It is your truth and your fact and your experience, what happened and how you perceived it. But it's just not the truth or fact or reality for everyone and overall. And that's what we tend to do, especially in this current culture that we find ourselves. I think always we have, especially in the media, but it just feels like it's even more rampant right now, or maybe it's just more disseminated widely. But I mean, just think about it for you. You could say COVID was terrible for you, maybe. You might have had people you loved died from COVID, and you may have lost your job, your income, your business because of COVID. So I'm not going to say that that's a story you made up. That's offensive. It's not a story you made up. You lived it. That really happened to you. That was the truth and a fact for you. Where we go wrong, though, and where we polarize from others and cause problems in relationships and in life, and even I think in our own heads, is when we take our perception, our experience as everyone's, as the overall fact. And it's not. COVID's the only fact. It's the objective reality. After that, you had your experience. That is your fact. It is not everyone else's. And to say so is false. And again, I'm talking to myself here, folks. This is what I've done most of my life. I've taken my experience and said, that's what happened. Well, it's not. And it's divisive to say so. You can say COVID was, I mean, you can say COVID was terrible for you. You can't say COVID was terrible because it wasn't for everybody. For someone else, it helped them find themselves. It helped them connect with others and their family. It helped them discover work-life balance. Heck, they might have found, maybe they were in the toilet paper industry and they made $1 billion. And that doesn't minimize your story, but it does showcase that it is again, story is a hard word to use here, but it is the meaning that you attributed to it based on your experience, which again, you can say is your truth. It is a fact. Bad things happened or good things happened, but we can't say COVID was our experience. It wasn't our experience. COVID is the objective reality, and then we all have our experience. And if we will own that for ourselves and not project it on everyone else, it'll keep us from alienating ourselves from other people. And I think it feels better in our own soul. It feels righter. Number 2, you have a perspective style. So as Lynda-Ross told us, you have 5 senses and you experience things through that. And then even more, so if something comes in, we experience something. And then we have our internal filter that's made up of, and what she says and what their research says, an innate perception style. We have an innate, I'm going to call it a filter. Now, I also feel like, and I don't think she disagrees with this, but that's not the point of her message, but that we also then have our experiences, right? We have the formed aspects of our perspective style as well from our experiences. Let's say with gravity, if you fell from a great height and got hurt, you may have a bad feeling about gravity. If you learn to hang glide, you may have a great thought about gravity. And Lynda-Ross's and her co-author, they say, your perspective style is innate. You're just born with it. And I believe that. In part 2 with my brother, he talked about his twins, came out of the womb minutes apart, and they inherently had a perspective style even before they'd experienced everything. And so Lynda-Ross was saying that that's not going to change. Now, the things that we have experientially we may look back and go, okay, you know what? I had a bad experience with gravity or with COVID, but that doesn't make it bad. And we may be able to reframe that a little bit in our perception style. But again, at birth, innately, you have one. Inherently, you have one, and you come out and you're going to experience things. And in Lynda, in their book, Perception, Unlocking Your Perception Style, they list them out. You can even take a test to find out what your perception style is. And I'm going to compare it in essence to, we always talk about that. Oh, so-and-so sees things with rose colored glasses. Or we may say, gosh, somebody sees it with, crap colored glasses. But it made me think of Bono, right? Everybody, you should know Bono from U2, the music group. He always wears glasses. Apparently he has an eye condition, glaucoma or something like that. But he may have rose colored glasses or orange or purple or green or blue or yellow or mirrored. And whatever he puts on is going to make him see things differently with a different color. I've got that. I was recently on a river and you wear polarized glasses so you can see the rocks underneath it better. Or, on a mountain bike, what do I wear? Photochromatic lenses that get darker or brighter depending on what I need and keep the bugs out this time of year. However, in this case, this filter that we have, this way that we perceive things, we don't get to change that. It just is. Okay. And that's not bad news, because hold on with me. That's not bad news, but it just is. So you have a perception style, and understanding that you have a perception style. Something's going to happen and you are naturally going to perceive it a certain way, and somebody else is naturally going to perceive it a certain way, should give us grace for everyone. And for those closest to you that you deal with consistently, if you can know that, if you can just understand, first off, they have a different perception. The objective reality happens, and then they have what they experience, and it's not wrong. It's not wrong. Again, I keep on, as I seem kind of emphatic here, I'm talking to me. I have done this. I am doing this. I may always do this, but I want to do it better. I want to do that less. I want to consider others better. So you have a perception style, everyone else does. And the ones closest to you, I would say, learn theirs, learn yours, then learn theirs as well. Number 3, and I think this is important. My brother brought this up in part 2, Jared. He said, there is a relevant difference between perspective and perception. All right. Let me read you the definitions. Perspective says a particular attitude toward or a way of regarding something, and then a point of view. Your perspective is, a point of view. Perception is a way of regarding, understanding, or interpreting something, a mental impression. So interpreting. So one way is kind of how we, what we see, and then perspective, what we see, and then perception, how we interpret what we see. And I used the example, and I think it's relevant here in Colorado in the Rocky Mountains. When you have a south-facing mountain, it gets the sun. And in the wintertime, even, it can be completely devoid of snow. Meanwhile, right across the road, or right across the valley on the other side, the north-facing slope will have snow, and we're skiing over there. It's a really different contrast. So if you've got two people who live on two sides of the mountain and they look out their window, one's perception is, it's sunny, bright, and dry outside. And the other's is, oh my gosh, it's dark, it's snowy and cold, over here, warm on the other side, cold over here. And that's their perspective. Now, their perception, though, is how they interpret it. The person over here on the warm side could say, man, this stinks. They're skiing over there. We got nothing. This is terrible. And, it's dusty and hot or whatever. Or they could look at it and go, man, this is great. Those folks are freezing over there. They're in jackets. We're sitting over here in short sleeves, waving at them with smiles because we're nice and toasty warm, and they're getting frostbite over there. That's perception. Now, I made that. It's a little, the analogy, I don't like it a little bit because it looks at it like a good or like a negative or a positive. And that is absolutely not the point of Lynda-Ross's and her co-authors' research. But it is saying we just have an innate way that we perceive things. We're going to perceive things with caution. We're going to perceive things with opportunity. We're going to perceive things with detail. We're going to perceive things. And you can go through all these things that none of them are bad. And in certain contexts, you want one over the other. All right. But I think that is important, that we look at it and say, there is a relevant difference between perspective and perception. All right. Now, another key point in this then is that your perspective style will likely be, and this is really what I came up with, something that's important to me based on a lot of other contexts too. It's going to be around protecting you, supporting you. It's going to be somewhat self-serving. I don't mean that to sound bad, but that's just inherently what we do. It's survival. It's going to be, you're going to have a confirmation bias in it. And first off, we don't want to judge. We don't want to look at ours and go, well, I'm just protecting myself. So I say that. And a big point here is not to judge your perception style and not to judge somebody else's, but just to understand that we're all going to see things in a way that helps us, that helps support us. We can't not. That is ingrained with us, and we need that. Otherwise, we're going to, be taking ourselves to risk. So, but to understand that we're all going to be protecting ourselves somewhat. Somebody else is, and we are too, and just have some grace for that. And then last, okay, number 5 here. Your perspective, this came from my brother. This is his words, Jared. He said, your perspective style, we want to be aware of it. If we're not aware of it, this whole thing's pointless. We got to be aware of it, be aware that something's happening, and we are going to be taken in through our perception style. But he said, it doesn't have to own you. It doesn't have to own you. So XYZ happens. Here's how I naturally perceive it. It doesn't have to own me, and it will if I'm not aware. It will if I'm not aware. So in my life, in Kevin Miller's life, my perception style, my natural inherent perception style has owned me most of my life. I am working and going to continue to work to be free of that it doesn't own me. It's not bad. And in some ways I can just go naturally with it and it may be great, but now I'm going to strive to be aware of it, put it on the table and go, okay, I just perceived that. Is that good? Is that serving me? Is that serving those who it pertains to or it affects? Is it serving the situation at hand? If the situation at hand needs us to kind of minimize something that happened and keep going, I'm your guy. If it doesn't though, if I'm a brain surgeon, we don't need any minimizing dude in there. We need somebody who's going to take the gravity of this and be totally in and maximize what's happening and be looking for the detail. So you don't want me. So, again, there's a situation. And the idea is that then we understand, we're aware of it, and we make choices that may supersede it, that may go beyond it. Again, we're not going to judge it and say it's bad, but go, you know what? My perception style is this. And this instance, I think that the situation or others or myself would be served better by acting, behaving, choosing, deciding differently maybe than what my style is. So those are 5 key points that really stood out to me. And again, with any message that I have, any topic that we have here and we're doing a series on, I'm taking in context from so much else. I just did a show yesterday on, I won't even tell, but I did a show yesterday that will be published in before long, and it had a lot to do with this. And a little bit of that even seeped into what I wrote here, what I thought about here, which is the point, man. We're taking in all these messages. We're trying to take the knowledge. We learn the knowledge. We hear the knowledge. Okay. We take in the knowledge. Doesn't help at all until we then say, okay, what am I going to do with it? What am I going to grapple with? What am I going to ponder? What am I going to engage with? What am I going to digest? What am I going to take action on? So you just heard the things that I have now after this series, I'm looking at going, this is what's significant to me. This is now what I get to work on and practice every day. So I hope you will too. Well, I hope you have a new perception of perception here. And thanks again to Lynda-Ross Vega for her time and her expertise for this perception style theory that we've been discussing, and the book, which again, if you're watching the video, is right over my shoulder here, Unlock the Power of Your Perception. You again can take a free perception style assessment at yourtalentadvantage.com. Thanks also to my brother, Jared Angaza, for his expertise on self-help and his insight, giving us specifically the concept of this personal perception style not having to own us. And thank you for tuning in. I really hope you learned as much as I have in this series on perception. Friends, thank you for tuning into Self-Helpful, where I curate the sea of new personal development materials and help you integrate wisdom into your life, because we all want to elevate our own experience and improve the way we show up for others.